Hallelujah, Yahweh. Father, we praise thee and we thank thee for the opportunity of being able to gather together and to praise thy name. We thank thee for thy coverage over us and for the fact that thou hast called us to be with thee and with each other. In Yahushua's name, amen.
Amen. All right, I'll see you guys in an hour.
Here's part 5 of the Yhuh Echad poster discussion. Just so people know, there's a verse that says, where it's translated that Yahweh gave us a fiery Torah. So it doesn't exactly say that, but the word is translated that it's fiery. I'd have to look it up and find it and discuss it. We could do that another time. But you wouldn't see that it says he gave us a fiery Torah. That's the way the interpreters of the words have given it to us. So, Jim, you should have to hit your camera off. So this part 5 here, we're going to talk a little bit more about the poster here. I wanted to make one thing clear. I've mentioned before, but there's probably close to 20 years ago when I first started looking at this, it was difficult to find anything on the internet regarding Paleo-Hebrew. Jeff Benner's site called Ancient Hebrew, I think he had just written his first book, or it wasn't even published yet. It was online available as a like a Kindle or something. You could read it. And I haven't looked at the site, but there's now a site that people have called Original Hebrew. And I think maybe it was Greg that had put up a link to one of their discussions about the letter Nun. This letter, kind of like the lightning bolt shape here. I watched that video the other day, and basically what they were saying is that the Phoenicians labeled this letter Nun, but it wasn't previously called Nun. They're suggesting, and I don't know where they get their reference, but they're suggesting that the letter used to be called Nachash, which is the word for serpent. And they said it's drawn like a snake. So just to be clear, it's not my intention to try to unearth or discover or recover the ancient frame of mind. That's not what this is about. People have asked in the past, where is the video where I run through the 22 letters showing Yeshua in the letters? Well, that's what this chart is. So it doesn't say, oh, this is Yeshua exactly, but comparing it to the chart, which is just the title of the one with the vertical stripes. And as I said before, this is the meta is in the pastel colors going horizontally right through the middle of that chart. Let me address this again. Where this says Aleph, sourced from Hashemayim, the heavens, beyond the scope of the cosmos. The reason the word Bereshit in Genesis 1:1 starts with the letter Bet is because that's the Bet, the house, the enclosure, the body of the cosmos, the material realm. So because Bet starts with, Bereshit starts with the letter Bet, Bet is the beginning of the whole scripture of the consciousness of this universe. Aleph, by inference, is what's beyond it on the other side. So Aleph is a silent letter, and it's a great mystery. Why does it start with Bet instead of Aleph? And of all the letters, why is Aleph silent? So in my mind, I mean, other people may have come up with this too, because everybody's supposed to be thinking about this stuff for themselves. But in my mind, it's like, well, Aleph is the referential creator, author, architect. Hey, those all start with the English letter A. So the Aleph being silent is to say, you look outside of the universe and say, What are we doing here? So Jim Holt's book, Why Does the World Exist, addresses that same question. And for somebody to say, well, how do we know who created the world, the universe, the humans? Was it a big bang? Did it just spontaneously combust? Was it intelligent design? Well, the fact that Aleph is the letter used for Elohim, the first letter of its word, which is, whatever. No, that's on purpose. Well, the Jewish people who study the language call the modern letters flame letters. And so if you look real close at the modern version of the letter, each one of them at the tip has a little point. That's this flame point, like the tip of any particular letter. And it just speaks of, well, like flames or plasma. There's solid, liquid, gas, plasma. There's 4 states of matter. Kind of esoteric, kind of always moving around. You can't identify it because it's not matter. It's not solid. Plasma is a different thing. It's an energy. So that's what Aleph represents. Whoever, whatever was the causal force. And I noticed that when you spell a verb or some sort of state of being, that when the word starts with the letter Aleph, it is translated typically as I am or I will. So when you see in Exodus 3 at the burning bush incident where Moshe said, "Who shall I say sent me?" And he said, "Ehyeh asher ehyeh." Tell them Ehyeh, Aleph He Yod He sent you. And he goes on to say, Yod He Vav He is his Shem, which is to say name or renown, of Zakar, which is to say remembrance or to stick in your mind. But he said, tell him Ehyeh sent you, Aleph He Yod He. And it's translated, I am that I am, or I will be what I will be. Well, so if Aleph is self-referential of the originator, the author, the architect, the administrator of the cosmos, that's all it's giving us. It's not giving us gender, size, expanse. It's just the other side of Bet, whatever that means. Everything else is extrapolated in our own imagination. If somebody says, no, Aleph is ox, well, you're right. The word Aleph does mean ox, but Aleph also means to be teamed up like oxen are teamed up with a yoke, and you have maybe 2, or maybe you have a whole bunch of oxen pulling a heavy load, a wagon. Aleph also means to be taught, trained, and domesticated, and to be of the house. And it's an interesting thing in Klein's dictionary, the letter Bet means body. It's used as a prefix letter, meaning in, on, with, among, through, or against. But it also means to be taught, trained, and domesticated, of the house. Both the Aleph and Bet have the identical definition in that sense, of the house. What are the rules of the house? And who rules the house? Ab, Aleph Bet, father. But Aleph Bet, if it's Aleph Bet Hey, it's an expression. If it's Aleph Bet Yod, it's my own, because Yod is the suffix that said this is my possession. And it means desire, preference, wish, will. The father's determination, his will, that's who runs the house. If the room is going to be painted blue instead of green, it's because that's what he wanted. If you take your shoes off when you come in, or you leave your shoes on when you step in the door, it's because that's the father's preference. And so Aleph Bet can also mean youthful vigor or verdure, like springtime, which is why then if you duplicate the second letter and make it the third, and then stick yods and vavs in between like wild cards, you get the word Abib or Aviv, Aleph Bet Yod Bet. Well, Bet is a gateway or entrance. So just a little tangent thought here. Babel, Bet Lamed, Bet Lamed, Baal is where you get nothingness or confusion. Blah, Bet Lamed Hey is like I feel blah, like, yeah. But Bet is a gateway. So Babel, you can read, is a gateway of confusion or of nothingness. Tower of Babel, Babylon, But Aleph, Bet, Bet, then Abib is the month of springtime when things are light green, 528 color, the sprouting of plants and everything coming back to life with vigor. That's Abib. Het, Bet, Bet is something, an imaginary void in your heart, in your what's called in your bosom, where it's filled with something that you desire. So Chababi said, one of the talks, that's where I believe we came up with the English phrase, hey baby, Chababa, Chet, eighth letter, our letter is H, their letter is Chet, the fifth letter, the hey is pronounced as H, the E, and this is where the confusion comes, is because you get English and Hebrew and the letter sounds, the letter position, transposed, moved around, and hence the confusion, which is why we're talking about this. But what I'm saying is that bet is the entrance, so the het is a fence, so what I harbor within my heart. Well, we talked about mem, noon, as in your heart. So the het is a type of enclosure. Mem is a type of inside an enclosure, a womb, a place where you hold your thoughts and affections. Bet's an enclosure. Pei is that which opens, so it's referring to an enclosure. So what I'm saying is that if somebody says, noon is a fish, no, noon is a serpent, no, noon is a sprout, I'm suggesting read this chart, and noon isn't necessarily any of those things. Those things are pictures which hold the essence of noon throughout time, thousands of years. Moshe was approximately 1600 BC, maybe 1500. Let's say 1500, easy to reckon. So just if you want an overview of history, go back 500 years and you get Abraham. So Abraham's about 2000 BC. And Joseph, just a couple generations later, well, is Joseph 2000 or is Abraham 2000? It's somewhere back there. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, those are 4 generations. They're somewhere around there, 2000 BC. Moses, about 1500. David and Solomon, 1000, maybe 900, somewhere in there. Jump up another 500 years, you get Daniel, and that's right around the time of Ezekiel. And then you jump up 500 years to 0 between BC and AD, Common Era. That's when Yeshua was hanging around. And then, well, why should we jump in 500-year increments since then? We know modern history, but just as the interesting thing, if you apply the 2,730-year curse with the 390-year interval starting in 721, you can jump ahead from Yeshua's day from about 60 AD and jump ahead in 390-year increments, and you'll get a couple other pictures of poignant dates. So if you look at these letters and say, what's going on? If I say, if Daniel 12, changed the meaning of the letters, blocking the perception of them by changing the orthography, changing the shape of the letters from the Paleo to the modern. Daniel was the chief Chaldean of the Persian Empire, Babylonian Empire, and then Persian Empire. Chaldeans were known as the magicians, hence the word magi, the astrologers, the stargazers, astronomers, but also just wise students, studiers of all kinds of scholarly efforts in all different directions. So what did Daniel change from what letter shape, from what letter meaning into what's called the Chaldean, hence Daniel, the chief Chaldean, the Chaldean flame letters? And if they're flame letters, what do those letters mean? Well, you can find modern books that different Jewish authors have written telling you what the letters mean. And they'll look at the shape of the letter written in modern font. The Aleph, has one line this way, that's like the Vav. Then the little piece down here, that's a Yod, and the other one up there, that's a Yod. So the Vav and 2 Yods, and the Yods are number 10, so that's 20, and this Vav is 6, so that's 26. Well, Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey. The Yod is 10, the Vav is 6, and the Hey, there's 2 Heys, those are 5, and that's 26. Oh, 26! That's the holy number, or that's the supreme number of Elohim, 26, because you can see it in the Aleph, and you can see it in the word Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey, and it's like, that's kind of a gematria thing. I'm not even going there. I'm not invalidating it, but I'm not even going there. I'm not arguing about how's the real, most ancient shape of the letter Aleph written. In my thinking, that's immaterial. It doesn't matter. It's a joke. Aleph is immaterial, Bet's material. Okay, but it just doesn't matter. The ox head reference, you can take our letter A, like that, and you can turn it upside down like that and put it on an angle like that. Hey, there's the nose of the ox, there's the 2 ears, the 2 horns. It's an ox head. That just carries the meaning like a suitcase through, since the days of Abraham, we got 4,000 years. 4,000 years. So if somebody goes back and say, oh, the Moabites, they wrote like this. Oh, yes, but those guys, these other guys wrote like this, and these guys, and it was a Proto-Sinaitic, was it Canaanite, did Moses get it from the Egyptians? It's like, whoa, none of that matters. Why? Because this study is not a matter of being archaeologists where we're trying to find the most valid, most ancient form of the letter and grab that and say, oh, let's reproduce this. This is taking what Yahuwah's Avot, the Elohim of Israel, gave to our forefathers back in the days of Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, through Moshe, through David, through Daniel, bringing it present tense and saying, we're making it our own. This is for present consciousness, usefulness to us today in full vitality. This has nothing to do with, I don't care how they used to write it. The fact that the letters are ancient, every one of these letters I use, it's called Paleo. Well, that's Phoenician. Well, no, the Phoenicians were pretty close. I don't care if it's Phoenician or not. That has nothing to do with it. The Etruscans used something similar. Ancient Greek was something similar. What I did when I composed this set of 22 letters, as I've said before, is I personally applied my own mind, subjective artistic license, and I looked at every possible shape of the letter from antiquity that I could locate, whether it was online or encyclopedias or other books that other people have tried to find the most ancient thing. And I found the shape of the letter that carried the heart Chababa expression of what that letter was really supposed to be, and whether any ancient scribe ever put that shape on paper, on parchment, I don't know, carved it into a rock. I don't know, have we even found the most ancient? Doesn't matter. The point is, because I see in this sequence of letters the fingerprints, as it were, of Yahuwah's Avot, where if I can appropriate that first letter, Aleph, is self-referential of identity and intent. I am, I will. That's a projection, so I could look at the Aleph as an arrowhead. Well, who's shooting the arrow? The guy on the other side of the Aleph. The arrow represents his intent to hit a target, and so he designs the bow, designs the arrow. Because of his inner intent, he shoots the arrowhead. Now that's betness into the universe, the cosmic realm, cosmos, and it ends at Tav, the target. Like you yoke up an ox, put a harness on its head, and drive it to the end of where it's pulling the plow, the furrowed, to the Tav. So what I'm saying is that this alphabet can be read as if it is the communication. So Aleph is the beginning of any word, Ehyeh, I am or I will. Anki, also translated I am, literally means I will plummet myself, like a plumb bob. You hold it up here, you drop something down with a weight, and it holds a line of perfect verticality. Builders use a plumb bob. The word anoch literally means that. Anochi means I plummet myself. So that's the first word in Exodus 20 of the 10 Commandments. Anochi Yahweh El Echad. I'm Yahweh your Elohim. So he's identifying himself. The word ani, Aleph Nun Yod, in the dictionary it says is the supreme admiralty of like the admiral of a fleet of ships. A majestic I am in a capacity of running military forces, military campaign. There's another word referring to myself is Aleph Tav Yod, eti, which is sometimes just translated as me. They will all know me. From the least of these to the greatest, that word me is Aleph Tav Yod. There's one other word that's self-referential of me. I can't remember what it is offhand. But my point is, if I can put Aleph in front of other letters and say, well, that's referring to the intent of the author, then I can say, well, this intent of the author is the original communication of the 22 letters. So this way to read the alphabet is, we're going to call him Yahuwah Zavot, or we're going to call him Ehyeh, but just the fact that he's the Aleph, these 22 letters are his expression, are the communication. It's his conversation with who? Well, nobody else exists other than the Aleph, guy, it, he, they, whatever they are, but they're undisclosed. Except when he says that he refers to himself in the masculine singular. See, the word zakar doesn't just mean remember, but it also means masculine. So when he says Yahuwah is his Shem Zakar, that's masculine name. Interesting thing about Yahuwah, Yod He Vav He, is that the He is the feminine suffix. So that one stone that was found up on Mount Ebal a couple years ago that they talked about last year, where it says cursed by El Yahoo, it's only Yod He Vav, 3 letters, because the Vav is the masculine suffix. So why would he give us 4 letters with a He feminine suffix, and yet the Vav is the masculine suffix? Those are curiosities to ponder. Nobody can make a declaration of absolute, yes, this is what it is, I know that. We're just thinking. We're just contemplating, pondering, meditating, cruising through this slalom of 22 flags like a ski run, just messing around with his alphabet. That's what this study is. And your thoughts are just as valid as mine or anybody else's. If somebody says, noon, it's not a noon, it's a snake, it's a nachash, oh, great enlightenment. Well, listen to what they say. They make a good point. That doesn't mean it's not ever called the letter noon. It just means there's reason to believe that it's drawn like a nachash, and maybe somebody called it a nachash. I don't know where they get their information. It doesn't matter where they get the information, because it's shaped like a lightning bolt. It's shaped like a sprout, a little sperm-tailed. It's also just a thing with life that jumps out of the mem. So if you look in the alphabetic sequence, what's noon? It's the thing that jumps out of mem, which is a pool of water, a type of enclosure like a womb, that leads us into Samic. Well, if Samic is shaped like a tree with branches, and noon is a sprout, and noon is the seed just as it's sprouting. Where's the snake? There was a snake in the tree in the garden. Well, there was no snake in the tree. There's pictures, there's stained glass pictures and illustrations showing a snake in the tree. But if the Nachash at one point stood upright, because didn't Elohim say that part of his punishment that he had to crawl on his belly and eat dust from now on? Well, did he have arms and legs that Yahweh pulled him off and dropped him to his stomach? Now he had to run around on his belly? Well, then he wasn't a snake in the tree. Somehow he was some sort of picture like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, perhaps. Big mouth, big teeth, you know. Why does the monster in Daniel chapter 7, there's 4 monsters. The fourth one, Daniel was, this guy was really unnerving, and Daniel described himself saying, my spirit rattled around inside of me like a knife in a sheath that were clanking. It's like, and the angel, Gabriel, came and gave Daniel insight about this fourth beast. A particular thing about this fourth beast is he had copper claws and iron teeth. It's like, ooh, that's pretty scary. It's like, we've talked, I was describing the other day, why did Yeshua have a crown of thorns? Because the word headdress had the word stomach noon, which is the word thorn, and bet vav tet, which has to do with looking at the aspect or the shape or the visualization of an utterance, which is shape of letters. You look at there was a really interesting thing I found about the word for, oh boy, I don't know where I wrote it now. The word that for folding. So Yeshua, this might be where it is. The word to fold a garment, mentioned last week, chet petov. It's also shin nun hey. There was another word I found that meant to fold something over. Well, rats, I can't talk about it now. It's anyway. When you find a word in the dictionary that means to fold something, and that it also means something else, and then you see that when Yeshua got out of the grave, they went in, they found this headpiece folded, it means something. There's messages in the story, in the visual narrative. They're not just pictures for the sake of drawing illustrations or cartoons or something. So when you see this fourth beast, he has copper claws. Well, the interesting thing for the word claw is the word taper. Like, well, if something's tapered, like comes to a point, that's like a teardrop shape. And there's an animal that taper with the long nose, which is a tapered. But why taper? What does that mean? But why copper? Well, copper is the word for serpent. It's nachash. It's brass, copper. It could also be steel, it said in the dictionary, Strong's Concordance. But so what? That's just what it's made out of. It also means enchanting or dazzling or bewitching. So his fingernails are bewitching? Gosh, what does that mean? Well, it means something. Enchanting, put you in a trance of, what did Yahweh say? But what about these iron teeth? What are teeth? Shen nun. It means repeat, do away, do again, to change something and do away with what it was and replace it with something else. So shin nun Aleph or shin nun hey, it's like Rosh Hashanah, the change of the year. Like we just went through the Janus Gate, the Roman change of 2022 to 2023. That's a different thing. People say Rosh Hashanah, that's in the fall, but Yahuwah Zavot, the Elohim of Israel, said the month of Aviv will be the beginning of the year for you. So we should have the mind to change our year. The annual Shana should be in the springtime, March, April, around that time, when the sprouts are Aviv coming out of the ground. Why? It sets up a culture of the kingdom. And remember, Yeshua said, don't be thinking, well, when's the kingdom of heaven going to show up? Is he going to come with all his horse? As soon as the heavens break open and there's Yeshua with all the angelic hosts, is that when the kingdom of heaven arrives? He says, kingdom of heaven is within you. It's right now. It's present tense. And it's like, well, I don't see no kingdom of heaven. Well, how do you get it? Adapt your mind to conform to Elohim's personal ways. If he says the year starts in the spring, okay, my year starts in the spring. What does that mean? Well, now I got to figure out how to do that and find some other people in camaraderie, ayin mem, the people kindred, to make that the reality. And I found that for him to give us this language is the tool, the vehicle to conduct that. For example, when he says, besides this guy having iron teeth, this fourth beast, he chews, he bites and chews with his mouth, kind of like the Tyrannosaurus Rex model. And then he stomps with his legs that which remains. Oh, like the Tyrannosaurus Rex had little tiny front legs and big giant legs. Boy, you could see the T-Rex being this fourth monster. But see, the word Shana means not just repeat or do again or change or pervert the countenance, like instead of Yahweh being our loving Heavenly Father, tender and kind, it's a perverted countenance where he's this furious beast gone mad. Yahweh himself is this rage-filled lunatic of... That's why people call him the big, ugly, mean, nasty God of the monster God of the Old Testament. But see, the word Shana also means to teach, learn, and instruct. Teach, learn, and instruct. If this fourth beast chews up, well, what happens when you chew something up? You break it into little pieces. Break up what? With teach, learn, and instruct. With your teeth. To pervert the countenance of Yahweh, what he said with his own mouth on Mount Sinai, where he was giving his people with all the love in his heart, the truth for the dynamic of their relationship being Echad. And so this fourth beast was somehow empowered by Elohim, because who invented these four beasts? It wasn't the devil. Those beasts didn't spontaneously generate themselves into existence. So Yahuwah Elohim must have somehow given these four beasts their being, including the fourth one, and given that fourth beast to have such a mouth with sharp teeth that he chews up and changes the countenance of the teaching and instructions that Yahweh wanted his people to learn. And whatever that doesn't accomplish to give that beast power, he stomps with his feet what remains. But what's the word for feet and leg? It's regal. What does regal mean? It's where we get the word regal and relegate and religion and regalia, RGL and RLG, regular, relegate. But it also, if you look in Klein's dictionary, custom, habit, and tradition. Whatever he can't change intellectually by chewing up the words into little pieces and rearranging the letters or changing the shape of the letters and bamboozle his people intellectually, he changes or he forces with regal of custom, habit, and tradition. So how do you break that power? Don't go along with the local culture of the infidel, heretic, heathen. That's why we don't do Christmas and Easter and Sunday. That's why, because it breaks the power of the beast. The beast got no power. He can chew with his mouth and he can stomp with his feet. He can scramble the words and letters and the meaning and the countenance of Elohim, and he can impose relegated, regal customs of the earthly king. But soon as we think Yahweh's way and take on Yahuwah's Moedim as our culture, the kingdom reigns. The kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of Yahuwah is present in full vitality as we yield to it, as we make it so. So these letters, to see these letters as the actual means and mechanism of Yahuwah's kingdom. It doesn't matter whether Nun looks like a snake or a sprout or a fish. It's not a fish. It's fish live in water and Nun comes out of Mem. Doesn't matter. Well, what's Mem? Water. Not just water. Mem is, the word Mayim is water. Mem is a place of a womb. Well, Rachem means womb, but it also means compassionate, and Chet Mem means warm. So it's the attitude, the idea of this warm, nurturing place where the mother that's harboring the seed of the husband isn't going to go get it aborted, isn't going to sit there and do drugs and alcohol and whatever's going to harm the development of that seed, but she's going to do everything she can to nurture and promote its development in its healthiest way. That's Rachem. That's memming. our attitude about what Yhuh said. So what Yhuh said, if memming so that the noon develops into Samic, if memming can be read in the sequence, comes right after Lamed, which comes right after Kaf. Kaf is an open hand. Okay, so I draw it sometimes with a curve with 2 lines. Well, that's only 4. Kaf, that should be 5. Am I distorting the shape? It's drawing so that it works. Some people draw a line with a V, so it's where we get our letter K turned this way. So you got this. The elements of the letters have been carried through the ages. Doesn't matter. But something about these letter shapes I've found to be elegant, which is to say unadorned, smooth, efficient, minimal, and expressing as cleanly and as purely the heart, the essence of what every letter really was trying to say. Well, how do you determine what they really are trying to say? Aleph has nothing to do with ox. Gimel's not about a camel. Dalit's kind of a door, but it's a choice. It's a portal to within one realm to another realm. Like from the heavens to the earth. From inside to outside. I mean, so this chart then, when somebody says, can you just tell me which video is talking about Yeshua in the alphabet? It's these videos regarding this chart. And if somebody says, well, can you explain how they work? Look at the chart. The idea of the meta being in between each letter. If you do film animation, it all has to do with the structure of how the cinematography works. When you see a moving picture, it's not a bunch of moving pictures. There's still pictures. Each one a photographed image. And if you have a shape here and then a shape there, if I showed you this picture and that picture, it's gonna jump. But if I take one film, one picture, another 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 picture, and then I put those. There was a device made in the early 1900s, pictures of a horse running, and it was on a circle screen, a light in the middle, and there was a gate that you looked at, and as the picture of the horse running spun around, because the way your eye works, it just sees each image. It looked like the horse was running. That was a great invention. Nobody had ever done that before. It was really one of the first, what we now have as movie projectors. So the more pictures you have between this image and that image, the smoother it's going to look. If it just jumps, well, that's where you get a comic strip or what's called a storyboard. So you get this picture, and then you get this picture, and then you get that picture, because we're just trying to show the author, the artist is trying to show a developing movement, but it's about how to go from here to there. So we might give 3 pictures, but if you give 30 pictures, it's going to be this real smooth action. To get from Aleph to Tav in 22 phases is what Yhuh determined. Yhuh determined the 22 storyboard pictures. The meta is, well, what's between here and there? What's the change that has to happen? Again, it's poetic license for me to say, I found these words in the dictionary, the English dictionary, just to grab a few: metagenetic, metage, metalogical, metamorph, metastasis, metabiosis. But the definitions seem to indicate actually what's going on between a couple of those letters. Now, just so you know, meta, that's kind of a Greek prefix, but look at mem tet aleph and mem tet hey in Klein's dictionary. It'll tell you, it gives it, I was looking at Strong's Concordance, it'll tell you that also, but it'll show you that it's what it takes to get from here to there. It is a change in state or being. So this chart was, instead of 22 static pictures like a storyboard, I was trying to make it more like this animated film concept where it'll blend so you can see how the alphabet works. Is noon a sprout? Is noon a snake? What would a snake be doing there? Some people say Tet's a snake. Tet's a full basket. What's written here, the full measure of the human experience. Dead, crushed, and cursed. What's that got to do with a basket? The human experience, you have to take on a certain mind from the Aleph. So how can I prove whether this is accurate or not? Somebody wrote in one of the comments, well, this stuff sounds interesting, but it's unvalidated. Well, somebody else a few years ago said, which university did you go to? Which teachers told you that this is what it is? I'll be telling you, no teacher told me this is the way it is. This is my own discovery or my own art. But yet, Hugo, who's going to talk here in just a few minutes, sees something like it that's so close, I could say he sees the same thing, but he'll tell you in his own words. Gilin also has said, you know, she listened to this and thought, wait a minute, and she tried to prove it or disprove it, or I call it breaking it. Here's the theory, the hypothesis. Can you break it? Can you bust it apart and say, look, it fails? No, it keeps getting stronger and stronger. The more you try to tear this thing apart, this understanding, the more solid it looks, the more true, real, valid it looks. The interesting thing, he calls himself Yahweh Zavot, Sabayoth, as Martin Luther said, Zadi Bet Aleph Vav Tav. And we said, well, Zadi Bet is army or turtle. Zadi Bet Aleph, to inflate like a massive army. Aleph Vav Tav is a letter of the alphabet. If you look at Yod Zadi Bet, it's a gazelle. It's beautiful. Zadi Bet Yod, Zavi. You see, if you put different prefixes and suffixes, you'll see different aspects. But it's something that's designed to be lasting and permanent and beautiful. And yet it's also a symbol of an oath. So I can read, why did he call himself Yahweh Zavot? It's translated, the word Zavot is translated, master of legions, captain of armies. The word master or captain isn't there. Commander, it's not there. It's just Yahweh Zavot. But in the word Zavot, all the translators will give you is Zadi Bet Aleph means army. Vav Tav is plural. There's the plural of armies. Yahweh armies. Must mean he's the leader of armies. Okay, we'll do that. Picture of Yeshua in Revelation 19 coming back with armies of angel armies behind him. Okay, well, there's the good connection. But if you look at the individual letter, the individual coupling of letters, Zadi Bet, Bet Aleph means to arrive, but Aleph Vav Tav is Aleph connected to Tav. It's like the arrow of the Aleph hitting the target Tav. It's joining them all together. So what joins them together? The meta. What's in between? What's in between Aleph and Tav? 20 other letters that Yahweh determined to be these phases or these gates that you go to. So the whole idea of this chart is to try to get our mind on board, Echad, with Yahuwah's mind. How do we become Echad with him? Yeshua gave us the means, the mechanism. He said, I only say what I hear my Father saying, and I only do what I see my Father doing. So if he gave us this Aleph Bet, then the more we wrap our mind around it, making it our own, is the mechanism that he gave us to become Echad with him. Well, there's just 22 letters. Yeah, but to notice that Aleph through Zion is a set of 7, and 7 means to swear a vow, or you get a curse if you don't keep the vow. What vow? Well, that's the Brit Olam, the great covenant of Yahweh with Israel, so that the church said was done away with and nailed to the cross, and we have nothing more to do with it. Well, go back and look at it, because it's still valid. And to see the Zion as the crucifixion, the Zadi is the resurrection, boy, that throws Yeshua in as the integral term of identifying what these letters are about. It's not about a fish hook and a hatchet, a Zadi and a Zion. It's about the crucifixion that's distinguishing. So when Pilate said, behold this man, well, that's English. English didn't exist. Did he speak in Latin, the Roman tongue? What would he have said? Ecce homo. Look at E-C-C-E, ecce, H-O-M-O, homo referring to like Homo sapien, the man. And you'll see over the centuries, people, really good artists, famous paintings under Ecce Homo, have showed Yeshua standing there, whipped, crown of thorns, robe, Pilate, presenting him to the crowd and them saying, crucify him. That's the staging, what I see in Hey, Vav, Zion. Hey, behold, pointing at the, Vav, number 6, the man, Zion, put to the weapon, but Zion, Hey, and Zion, Aleph, Tav also mean this. So when Pilate said, behold, this man, that's Zion, Hey, Zion revealed, but why Zion, Aleph, Tav? Why is Zeit the word this? Because if you understand the Aleph Tav, you'll understand that moment that Pontius Pilate was pointing at Yeshua, having placed the crown of thorns, and Zion can mean adorned with weapons, crown of thorns, wearing a special officer's hat, crown of thorns, being made the example, like putting a halo behind the head of, in the Renaissance era, people would do that. Oh, this is the saint. So they'll put a circle behind one guy's head, a square, or maybe a triangle to show different classes of saints when they're trying to illustrate a painting. So you know who they are drawing pictures of. That's what the Zion is. Designate the special guy of regard and adorn him with weapons. And so it's one thing to hand an officer a gun or a sword or a shiny badge and say, here, you're adorned with some kind of accoutrement of weaponry, but they use the weapons on Yeshua, adorning him with weapons. It's so Hey Vav Zion. Once you see it, it's like, there's Yeshua being whipped and tormented, put to the scourge by the Romans. And then the very next thing after they killed him, threw him into the tomb. There's the Chet, rolled around rock. There's the Tet. And he said, no man takes my life. I lay it down. He himself. So the Yod is possessive, but Yod is also a grabby hand. The Romans took from what I understand, it was a big, long, as it were, a bolt about an inch diameter of steel and hammered it through a hole, drilled through the round rock into the face of the cliff to keep that rock from rolling. Nobody could just walk in and push it aside. That Yod held fast. Kaf Lamed, part of the Mishkan pattern lining up with the Torah. Kaf, lines of instruction. If that's a hand, but if I put my hand this way, those look like parallel lines, like script written. Lamed means teach and learn, rehearse. Lamed's an authority, a shepherd's staff. The authority of teaching and learning the lines of script, well, that's Torah study, which you then, mem, take into your heart, and noon it births the seed. Yeshua said, he said, the word of scripture, the word of Elohim is this seed. So is it the seed that sprouts? Is it you somehow within yourself? If we think of ourself in this flesh, incubating our eternal self, then somehow we blend Echad, almost like the picture of the male, female, the two becoming one, and then mitosis happening. So the us with the potential for eternity, blending with the sperm seed of Yahuwah, the Zakar, coming into our female aspect of Mem, whether we're male or female, bonding together, making the noon our self unto eternity, a new creature that sprouts and becomes what is the Psalmic. Though Yeshua said, I'm the vine, you're the branches. It's another metaphor. These are layers of metaphors like wheels within wheels. And so when Ezekiel saw wheels within wheels, oh, let's just draw a picture of circles. Like Kurt had a bunch of those pictures up. And it's like, well, there's that. You can turn it into an illustration, but it's also the metaphor principle. The principle is, as we willingly take in Yahuwah's seed, which Yeshua identified as being his word, which is not just the Torah, but this word of the Aleph Bet with 22 letters, as we take that in, we nurture it, rachem, within our womb of fond warmth, then our eternal being takes on a life, echad with him, and we then become, the rest of our life is a preparing us for what comes next after Tav, which we don't even know. We don't know what was before Aleph. We don't know what was after Tav. But our time on earth is this 22-letter gamut, run, obstacle course sequencing. And so you can read these 22 letters so many different ways. And I've tried to say I've found more than 500, and Hugo's about to show us another way. He told us last week, which I thought was fantastic. Here, let me show you the 22-letter sequence in the book of Luke. And it's like, this is Yahweh is showing himself. This is Yahweh showing us how he designed the universe. This is the covenant. This is the consciousness. This is the kingdom. This is Yeshua. This is what's in this 22 letters. It's the fractal pattern. And if you want to know fractal pattern, actually, Sally had access. Maybe, Sally, you could put that up on the chat. There's a certain, I think it's a type of asparagus, but it's a cone-shaped asparagus composed of cones, which are composed of cones, which are composed of cones. The big model is the same as the little, which is the same as the little, which is the same as the little piece, which is another fractal of the same as the big. It's like, what? He gave us that type of asparagus as that fractal pattern. I'm convinced very specifically to say, that's the model of the universe. That's how it works. That's how I built it. Thank you very much. Once you see it and you can associate with it, and it's like, okay, which letter is that? It's a model of the whole thing, like the horsetail plant. The equisetum is a model that I noticed is the way the whole alphabet works. So is teeth sheen, or is teeth shiny, or is sheen fire? Or is it that which consumes? Teeth consume, fire consumes. What's that got to do with the fourth beast of Daniel 7 with teeth? If he is empowered by Elohim to chew things up and change them, and then impose habits and customs, it's kind of like the Wizard of Oz. And again, the word Oz is Ayin Zion, which is power and strength and spectacular. And they say to Dorothy, you could have got, there it is, thank you. All you had to do was click your heels and say, I want to go home. You could have returned at any time to Kansas. That's a whole nother story in there. The Wizard of Oz, Frank Baum wrote that. It's a Jewish name, and there's all kinds of Hebrew stuff in there. But the point is, we could have gone home any time. We just didn't know. We weren't home. We thought the church was home. We thought 21st century Christian America was home. No, it's the captivity. It's mystery Babylon. You want to go home? This is it. This is the path home. So the spirals of the shields, you'll notice, if anybody takes notice, that at the very beginning of Wizard of Oz, when Dorothy lands there and in Munchkin land, there's a golden spiral that leads to the yellow brick trail that leads to Oz. One reason I have a golden spiral playing off that motif, because there's this thing about spiral, there's this thing about the path, there's this thing about going on. I've tried to blend in all these different metaphors of consciousness into this study. Just art, just poetry. This is that trail. All we need to do is take it to heart and say, I want to go home. I want to shuv. I want a teshuvah. Back to Yahweh. Yahweh Elohim Zavot. And he gave us this plumb line, this lifeline, this rescue. And all the voices to say, it's a fish, it's a snake, it's an ox, it's a camel. Got nothing to do with anything. But to see Yeshua, because a lot of people talking smack about putting Yeshua down, to see Yeshua in these letters, holding the 22 letters in sequence by his narrative gospel story, boy, that's a big deal. And the whole idea of the Ayin Dalet, Ayin Tav, there in Daniel 12:4, to see each one of the two Ayins, the Dalet and the Tav, and the word Dalet Tav, if you put those together, that means right, pious, orthodox, legal. This is the solid reality of Yeshua in the 22 letters. And seeing the 22 letters is validating Yeshua. And because the 22 letters are calibrated to the Moedim, if somebody says, oh yes, because of Jesus, we have Christmas and Easter. Lie, wrong, doesn't work. Moedim, go back to the Moedim. You want the kingdom of heaven to appear? Go back to the Moedim. You want the kingdom of heaven to be now? Learn his language. It's accommodating Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. How many times you want to say that prayer and yet you'll refuse to look at his things? He gave us this so that we usher in the answer to the prayer. We're not sitting here waiting for him to come riding in with his army. We accommodate by taking on the mind and heart of what he already gave us. We're standing at the street corner waiting for the bus. Oh, the bus is late, not following the clock. Or is the bus waiting for us? When does Revelation 19 happen? Yeshua appearing in the sky. Some people think the armies behind him are humans that have died and gone to heaven, dressed in white robes, come riding in on all the white horses behind them, or are those angel armies? It's a picture. Maybe that doesn't even matter. The point is, if we're alive, if we're breathing, if we're listening to this right now, we could be the best army that he's got. Humans were fit to do something on the face of the earth that even angels aren't allowed to do. Angels don't have the power and capacity to accomplish what Yahweh's humans are placed and given to do. We are placed and stationed here. The word Zadibet means to be placed and stationed. He has given us recognition and consciousness of these letters, what they are, what they mean, how they work. Why us? Why now? He's the commander of Zavot, you know. He's got it all figured out. We just have to be with heart and gusto along with it. We're going to have to take a break here, in which case Hugo is up. Just so you know, in the past, on the chart, the array, there's 11 shields, and my intention was to make a couple hundred. I'm working on 2 more based on Ani Ledodi Vedodi Li. I am my beloved's and my beloved is mine, from Song of Solomon. Instead of taking verses, we're going to take words to learn. Words to learn about our attitude about him and his attitude about us. Is this dynamic relationship of looking at each other, forming the Echad. Hopefully next week. Anyway, got to take a break.
Can intervene if need be.
If you start going off the trail.
Yeah.
Do you mind introducing Hugo so we know who he is?
Sure.
Okay.
So I might just butcher the French name, but this is Hugo La Montagne. Something like that, right?
La Montagne.
La Montagne. Hugo of the mountains? Is that what it is?
Or the mountain.
Hugo of the mountain. He actually is an outdoorsman up in Quebec area, where he finds edible and nutritious treasures in the woods that most people don't even know are there. They just walk right past and could starve to death, and Hugo could find a gourmet banquet right there, which he retrieves for people. Well, what I'm saying is that you have now done the same thing with applying this eriktology study. And last week he showed us something in the book of Luke where, you just read right past the story. He said, let me show you the alphabetic sequence. And so you're about to show us one other thing in Exodus, I believe it is, right?
Well, I'm talking about the structure of the alphabet and its place in many situations or many, like in the desert. I mean, I want to start first by saying that this alphabet, it's the banner. I believe that Yah is lifting up for the nations to see. Yah wants to attract the attention of the nations, and this understanding of the alphabet. I mean, I see this as being the banner. So, having had proved this alphabet or this teaching of eriktology, yes.
Hang on, could I intervene for a moment here?
Yes.
Back when, a number of years ago, my wife was looking, it's somewhere in the Psalms, maybe you know where it is, Hugo, I can't remember, but there's a verse that says, Yahweh has given a banner to be lifted up for those who fear him because of the truth. Now, that's a really strange sentence. He's given a banner to be lifted up for those who fear him because of the truth. And she looked and found that the letters Nun and Samik were banner, but also means to be lifted up. And the word truth is Kuf Shin Tet. It's not the word Aleph Mem Nun, which is a decoration, which is a type of bow, to those who fear him. So for Hugo to start off by saying, this is the banner that Yahweh has lifted up. And the word for Yeshua is to say, like Moshe lifted up the serpent on the stick, the Nun on the Samik. So if the Son of Man be lifted up, the Nun on the Samik, that all who gaze and look at it will be healed from the viper bites. It all plays into exactly what he's saying. And I'm not sure you even knew that, but that's why we even have this Nun Samik logo, and the word bush, Hey Samik Nun Hey, happened to be playing in it too. But this has been the theme since way back in like 2000, I think when did she come up with it? 2010 or 8 or something like that. Anyway, so carry on, Hugo. I just wanted to give you some credibility there with my study, totally independent of yours.
Thank you, because that's what it's about. Yeshua or Yahusha is a banner, and the Aleph Bet explains that. So I want to be a holder of the banner like you, Eric. So first, I want to go in Isaiah 46:10 and then look at the word there that is used is mem gimel yod dalet, which means to declare or to herald, but it's from nun gimel dalet. And then that's where the word I want to use there, nun gimel dalet. What it's saying is a fish that camels adore, or a fish that channel or pass around the heart. And that's a bit what the subject of this talk is. It's I want to go at the heart of the matter. So I want to declare something, nagad. I want to talk about the heart. And then the other verse I want to use there, it's in Psalm 92. It's the verse 12. The translation is a bit awkward, but I'm not using the translation there. I'm using the word count, because there we are kind of told or taught to count our days. And the word used is minute, like a minute. And the definition there is a portion or a part. So that's it. I want to get to the heart of things. So that's the heart part of the things. And then when we look at the Mishkan pattern, and first I want to go to the book of Exodus, because there's a very good example of the Aleph Bet being parted. And then it's Exodus 25:34, where Yahuwah is telling Moshe how to make the menorah. And then this verse talks about the center branch of the menorah, which is the heart of the menorah. So just to give you a bit the example of the importance of the heart into this discussion there. So moving on, I'm going to compare the Aleph Bet with several things there. And first, I want to bring us in the desert. The shore of the Red Sea. Once the people were there, they were free. So the first gift, and then I link it with the courtyard, the Chet Tet Yod and the Aleph Bet. The first gift was freedom. It's like at that time, the people of Yah entered into that courtyard of his. Next thing that they were given, so they were given freedom. That's the gift they received, the gift of freedom. They were free. Second gift they received is the gift of celebration. They were given manna. And then this goes with the altar, yes, the burning altar, and then Kaf Lamed. I mean, with the manna, there came some instruction. and then with his authority. So that was the gift of celebration, because it was for Shabbat. I mean, the manna was to feed them, but on the sixth day precisely, they had to gather a double portion of the manna so that they could celebrate on the seventh day. So that's a bit the idea of celebration, the gift of celebration that Yah has provided his people, and us also, same. Then the second gift, third gift, I mean, coming to the laver, Mem and Noon there. Yah gave the water, the Mount of Horeb, that just provided water to the people. And not only he gave them water, but he gave them prosperity. That's a bit the gift that was given to them, prosperity, because Amalek and his people came against Israel. And then as much as the people of Israel were looking up, they were winning the battle. But if they had their arms down, like Moshe had his arms held up high, so that the Israelite could overcome the Amalekites. But yet the gift there was the gift of prosperity. So they were given that. And then that's where I'm coming now, at the heart of what they were given there. What they were given there is the 10 Commandments that we call, the 2 tables of stone, and even the coming up on the mountain of Yah to tell his people about his way, his Torah, that was fiery. I mean, it was like the centerpiece of the menorah. So both these stones tablet are a support, and then that's probably the most wonderful support there is on earth. Anyway, going further, the letter Ayin there, and the gift that was given to Israel was a courtyard. The 7 elements of the courtyard was given there as a Ayin. Why? Because the high priest was, through the year, was seeing every people that were coming to sacrifice for forgiveness of sin, for their sin. And then the high priest had to see these things so he could put his hand on the goat and confess these things. And then, so this place is like a sea. And then what is that Moshe saw in the heaven? That's what he saw. He saw that courtyard. So that's what he made. And moving further, that letter Pei there. So that was the gift of the courtyard. The letter Pei is the gift of the priesthood. All these people that had to do their duty in the courtyard, that had to accomplish the sacrifice, and then like the menorah, and then like Zechariah, the father of Yochanan, John the Baptist. He went and ministered to the altar of incense, which is related to Pei there. So that was the gift of priesthood in the desert. So coming to the Ark of the Covenant, what was the gift there? It's the promised land, a place where they could be righteous and then accomplish their things. And tell the world about Yah. So plainly, that's the desert. That's what I wanted to bring out about the desert, the heart of that part, because there were parts. At the heart of that was the coming down of Yah on the mountain. And it's like the center branch of the menorah. Okay, look. I have a son that is crying. Probably another son that is making him cry. Okay, starting with Luke.
This is Luke, what, chapter 2, you say?
First chapter, verse 1. We start there.
Luke 1:1.
Yeah. I'll find it in English. Sorry, I'm in French there. Okay. For as much as many have taken in hand to set forth in order a declaration of those things which are most surely believed among us. So the Aleph there, what can I say about the Aleph? What is the idea there? I would say that the idea is to make a declaration, to set forth in order a declaration. So that's what the Aleph, the plan is. What we're looking for now is Beth, a house. Even as they delivered them unto us, which from the beginning were eyewitnesses. So that's next. That's the bet there, the eyewitnesses and ministers of the word. And then what happened with these eyewitness? They became ministers. They went forth. They just started walking that walk of ministers. That's the gimel there. Verse 3, and it seemed good to me also, having had perfect understanding of all things from the very first. There, from the very first, from the heart, from the beginning, from the origin, from where it has taken the door or come out from the door or actually come in. To write unto you in order, to write, that's there, to the declaration is the plan, but uh, that's there to write in order. That's the hate there to show, to make seen. And then the Vav, we come to the Vav, which is the most excellent Theophilus. That's the Vav is a man. On the sixth day of creation, man was created. So the Vav is the mediator. I mean, Luke did not write this thing for no one. There was a connection that had to be made. So Theophilus became that connection. And then the word Theophilus, it's interesting because philo means love in Greek and Theo means God. So he's a lover of God. So Luke, was he writing to one person or to a whole bunch? And then that's a bit the idea of noon or fish. Fish is not just one, it's a whole bunch of fish. Another idea of noon.
Yep.
Okay, Theophilus is the vibe. Now we're looking for design, the cutting edge there. And verse 4, that that you might know the certainty of these things, wherein you have been instructed. That's there. That's design, the cutting edge, the certainty of these things. Like to know for sure this is it. That's that. The Zayin Aleph Tav or Zayin Hey means this. This is it. That's that. So now we are welcomed in the courtyard there because we are introduced by the priest. So we're coming into the Chetet Yod, and then we see the priest in there. So there was in the days of Herod, verse 5, the king of Judea, a certain priest named Zechariah of the course of Abdiah. And his wife was the daughter of Aaron. Her name was Elisheva. So that's it. That's the Chetet Yod. You've been introduced in the courtyard, and then you meet the priest there. And they were both righteous before El, walking in all the commandments and ordinances of the Lord blameless. So right there, you get to the altar of incense. No, the altar, not the altar of incense, but the altar in the courtyard. And that has to do with the Kaf and Lamed and the instructions. And they were actually blameless in all these. So they followed the instruction and the authority of the instruction. And they had no child because that Elisheva was barren, and they both were now well stricken in years. So that's the labor or the mem and noon. I mean, they were not blessed just yet with having a prosperity or posterity. Again, the idea of noon is very present there. Amazing. Okay, moving on in the tent there. And it came to pass that while he executed his priest's office, that's there. He's the summit. He's the summit there, the support. He's the one doing the labor, the duty before God in the order of his course. Verse 9. According to the custom of the priest, his lot. That's there. That's the ayin, letter ayin. His lot. Yah saw that there was to be this man that was to be taken as a to do the duty there. So the lot has to do with the ayin. And his lot was to burn incense. That's the letter pay, and the letter pay is connected with the altar of incense when he went into the temple of Yah. Verse 10 there, we're looking for the letter Zadi. And the whole multitude of the people were praying without at the time of the incense. So the letter there, praying, is the letter Zadi. And then if we look at the Chaldean flames, the letter Zadi looks like someone that is kneeling and praying. And the Zadi Sofit can look at someone standing and praying. Okay, so now we're outside the temple there because people are praying without. And then we come back in there. That's the kuf there, the long reach. Yah reached to men, and then he's showing up to that Zechariah, that servant there, and they're standing right next the altar. And then when Zechariah who saw him, he was troubled. Like the sighting was so exalting, like he was so troubled, he started to fear. But then he was told to not fear, and then that's the sheen there. And then why sheen? The fire has to do with being comforted. Well, sheen and then El Shaddai, the purveyor of all benefits. I mean, this is a comforting thing to be addressed by actually the messenger of the Most High. And this sheen, the fire, which will burn the enemies of Yah, yet it will purify us and refine us. And this is a comforting idea of that. So fear not is the sheen there. Fear not because your prayer was answered. That's the top there. That's a sign of he comes to tell John the Baptist that his prayer will be answered. And then it goes more. There's a other sequence that you can go and find on your own. Thank you.
Yeah, so we're out of time here, but just so people see, this is a similar pattern to where I found in numerous scriptures, the thought of the meaning of each letter in sequence is carried by the narrative, but you have to get past the object of the letter and look at the meaning, the heart, the theme of each letter. And again, it's to have an echadness with Yahuwah. The point of this study, Yeshua in John 17, as we talked about last week, prayed that we would be echad with him. And again, the upshot of this entire study is for that aim, that goal, that purpose. So it looks like we're out of time. So thank you, Hugo.
Thanks, Hugo. Hey,
Hallelujah.
Diana, do you want to close us out if you're there? If you're able.
Yeah, absolutely. Abba, Father, in the name of Yahuwah, thank you. Abba, Father, and I just thank you, Father, for this opportunity to gather here again today. And I thank you, Father, for what's been brought forth by Hugo and by Eric. And I thank you, Father, that your language has been tested and it's been standing true. I thank you also, Father, for your time that you've given us today. Thank you, Father. It's in Yeshua's name I pray, amen.
So be it. I will see you next week. The after show begins. Thank you, guys.